Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Freeland here. I'm so glad you have joined me for a lesson today. We're going to start our new writing unit, and our new writing unit is going to be about small moment stories. So, we're going to talk about what is a small moment story today, and we're going to listen to someone else's story. And the reason why we're going to listen to someone else's story is we really need to see what's in a small moment story and what it looks like and what it sounds like. And that's going to help us be a better writer. So, you know how a coach might teach you how to do something, or someone in your family might teach you how to do something? We're having this story that we listen to is going to teach us how to write a small moment story. So, we're going to call that a mentor text. So, let's listen to this story, boys and girls, and then we're going to think about some things in this story that might help us be better writers and write a story kind of in the way this person writes a story. This story is called Fireflies, and it is a small moment story. So let's listen to this story and see if we can see how this person wrote the story, and maybe we can think how we can write a story, our own small moment story.
On a summer evening, I looked up from dinner through the open window to the backyard. It was growing dark. My treehouse was a black shape in the tree, and I wouldn't go up there now. But something flickered there. A moment. I looked, and it was gone. It flickered again. Over near the fence. Fireflies. Don't let your dinner get cold, Mama said. I forked the meat and corn and potatoes into my mouth. Please, may I go out? The fireflies. Mama smiled and Daddy nodded. Go ahead, they said. I ran from the table down to the cellar to find a jar. I knew where to look, behind the stairs. The jars were dusty, and I polished one clean on my shirt. Then I ran back up 2 stairs at a time. Holes, I remembered, so they can breathe. And as quietly as I could, so she wouldn't catch me dulling them, I poked holes in the top of the jar with Mama's scissors. The screen door banged behind me as I ran from the house. If someone said don't slam it, I wasn't listening. I called to my friends in the street, fireflies, but they had come before me with polished jars, and others were coming behind. The sky was darker now. My ears rang with crickets, and my eyes stung from staring too long. I blinked hard as I watched them. Fireflies, blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making white patterns in the dark. We ran like crazy, barefoot in the grass. Catch them, we cried, grasping at the lights. Suddenly a voice called out above the others. I caught one, and it was my own. I thrust my hand into the jar and spread it open. The jar glowed like moonlight, and I held it in my hands. I felt a tremble of joy and shouted, I can catch hundreds! Then we dashed about, waving our hands in the air like nets, catching 2, 10, hundreds of fireflies, thrusting them into jars, waving our hands for more. Then someone called from my house, it's time to come in now, and others called from their houses, and it was over. My friends took jars of fireflies to different homes. I climbed the stairs to my room and set the jar on the table by my bed. Mama kissed me and turned out the light. I caught hundreds, I said. Daddy called from the hallway. See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile, I called back. I caught hundreds of fireflies. In the dark, I watched the fireflies from my bed. They blinked off and on, and the jar glowed like moonlight. But it was not the same. The fireflies beat their wings against the glass and fell to the bottom and lay there. The light in the jar turned yellow, like a flashlight left on too long. I tried to swallow, but something in my throat would not go down, and the light grew dimmer, green, like moonlight underwater. I shut my eyes tight and put the pillow over my head. They were my fireflies. I caught them. They made moonlight in my jar, but the jar was nearly dark. I flung off the covers. I went to the window, opened the jar, and aimed it to the stars. Fly! Then the jar began to glow, green, then gold, then white as the moon, and the fireflies poured out into the night. Fireflies, blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making circles around the moon, like dancing stars. I held the jar, dark and empty, in my hands. The moonlight and the fireflies swam in my tears, but I could feel myself smiling.
Okay, boys and girls. That was a really fun book. I don't know, have you ever caught a firefly? Maybe you have. So you see that that person wrote a story about one night and something they did, one thing they did that night. So a small moment story is not a story about your whole day. It's not your story about a whole trip. It's not your story about like going somewhere from getting up in the morning to going to bed at night. It's about one short moment of something, and it's the most important moment of what you did. So when they wrote about fireflies, I counted about 7 or 8 pages that was a part of the story about actually catching the fireflies. And so the author really spent a long time like telling what it was like to catch fireflies. So boys and girls, when we talk about a small moment story, that doesn't mean our people are little or we don't have very much time. What it means is you take one thing that happens and we take the most exciting part about that story and make it and spread it out and tell a lot about that small moment of the story. So let's look at some things that were in this small moment story. And I have them here on my chart. So small moment stories, the first thing is they're true. So you're going to be writing about true things that happen to you. They're usually told in order. So like the boy first got the jar, then he went out and caught the fireflies, and then at the end he let them go. It was in order. It's about one time in one place. It was about him catching fireflies, right? Now, it's a small moment. So of that whole day, he only told just about catching the fireflies, the most exciting part of it. It told how he felt. Do you remember when he had tears, right? And that showed you how he felt. That's part of a small moment story. It had talking in it, like he was talking to his parents and talking to the other kids outside. And the author always tells you what it looked like. So remember, he really talked about the jar and what the jar looked like and what it looked like to catch fireflies at night. So boys and girls, today we took some time just to think about a small moment story and to think about the parts of a small moment story and what a small moment story really does. It takes one little thing that we've done and it takes that moment, and it could be something really ordinary, but for you, it could be a special thing. And then you take the most interesting part of that story and then really tell a lot about that tiny part. So when we say small moment story, that's what we mean. It means where you take one thing that happened and you take that tiny part of that story that was the most interesting and tell a lot about it. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that story. I did. And I want you to start thinking about how you can tell your own small moment story.